It's
Hello.
Halloween, baby Win.
Happy Halloween,
It's
little
Halloween,
bird.
baby shark. We don't have a costume for you, unfortunately.
No.
I'm sure that you would be fine without your costume. You don't really want a costume.
Though
Oh my
yesterday
gosh.
you were reminding me of some of our costumes in the past.
Yes. Okay. So Jeff and I have dressed up as
Well,
couples costumes.
It was in Michigan because there was a thing called the Tour of Terror.
Tour of
which was
Terror, East
essentially
Lansing,
a
Michigan.
bar
Or no, it was
crawl.
Lansing, Michigan, not East Lansing.
Yes. Where you could walk between different bars and everyone was in costumes. Okay, there you go, buddy. See, we are usually on the couch and he has no problem.
Yeah.
He just sits in the middle. So we were Yoko Ono and John Lennon one year.
Mm-hmm. We were penguins as part of a group of penguins just
Oh my gosh, there were
navigating
so many of
downtown
those.
Lansing.
That was a helpful one because it got really busy
We
and
were
then you
wearing
could find each other
Snuggies.
really well.
So if you've
Also,
seen
it
me
was warm.
wear my polar bear Snuggie that I got gifted from Jerry and David, it was like that, but we were all penguins.
We were Violet and Dash.
Violet and Dash from The Incredibles, and Katniss and Peeta
Katniss and Peeta.
from The Hunger Games.
The Hunger Games.
Yeah.
We recently rewatched the
Yeah, we
Hunger
got it.
Games.
Okay, so we watched the first one. We need to move on to the second one.
Yeah.
I love The Hunger Games as a series.
Yeah,
One of my favorites.
we hadn't watched it or read it in a really long time, and we were like thinking about
Well, it was on Hulu.
storytelling and how different
I
stories
saw
that we enjoy.
I saw the little face of Katniss Everdeen, and I was like, okay, we must watch this. I quote
Girl on
Effie all the
fire.
time. May the odds be ever in your favor.
I know you do.
What else?
Oh, Halloween's awesome.
Halloween. Oh my gosh.
Everyone should check out Wicked Makers.
Wicked Makers
There's
are
a
friends.
couple of our friends from Bad Plans who do tons of amazing Halloween
They do
stuff.
DIY projects that are super spooky, super elaborate, and fun to watch, like the process of,
Find them on YouTube.
being made. Yep.
Otherwise, I think we should get into it and
Okay.
see what's what.
All right. One's
ready. Turn to page 145, Mayhem at the Ministry. Today's lesson is called Fraud at the Daily Prophet.
Jeff has an alt title for this. I don't know if you
Fake
want to
news.
reveal it eventually. Okay.
The chapter begins with a hurried exit from the Quidditch World Cup. Mrs. Weasley is relieved when they get back to the Burrow, brandishing a Daily Prophet with terrible scenes and an article written by Rita Skeeter that includes rumors of several dead people. Mr. Weasley declares he needs to work overtime to help with the situation, and Percy joins him. The rest of the kids prep for Hogwarts, play a little Quidditch. Harry tells Ron and Hermione about his Voldemort dream and that he has sent a letter to Sirius. They count down the days as Mr. Weasley and Percy burn the midnight oil, and Hedwig still hasn't returned. Oh, they have to pack dress robes.
What are those? Yeah. We also watched Goblet of
Yes, we
Fire
did
last
last
night.
night, yeah.
So this is fresh
We're
on
in
our
recovery
mind.
mode post.
Oh my god, I
streaming.
can't. Oh, I thought you were gonna say post Cedric's death.
Well, rip Cedric.
Man, it just makes me so sad.
As soon as he
every
jumps down from the
time.
tree,
I'm just
rip.
like, I know. Every time I mention Cedric, even like with Wizards Unite or anything, I'm just like, oh, Cedric, I'm so sorry. Anyway,
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought of where we were going with, or where I was going
we
with
had
it.
watched the movie.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch the movie and then be in
I
that
remember.
book. We've done that for pretty much every book.
I think Rita Skeeter would be like the first person
My
to
gosh,
enter
Winnie.
the bad place.
Rita Skeeter would found the bad place.
Oh my gosh, Winnie,
You've
don't hit the
given up
microphone.
your privilege of
Stop.
sitting on Lynette's
Stop.
lap.
Yeah. So there's a lot happening in this chat. It's short, but it's like there's a lot of what are people's reactions? We've talked a lot about people's reactions to, or like in the wizarding world when something happens. And so here is an example of an event happening and then people reacting. So you have Rita trying to, I don't know, do what she does best, make up rumors to make money off of people.
This is the first we've been introduced to her.
I know.
Yeah. I forgot that this was the way that we're introduced to her. Because in the movie, it's
she's
Triwizard
interviewing the champions.
yes.
Yeah. Harry Potter, a
but
boy
this
of
is really
12.
interesting because it's we meet her through text form, which is really interesting, where she's writing this article and freaking out Mrs. Weasley.
Bill.
Yeah.
Like, remember she wrote about me? I forgot how, a long-haired,
Yes.
whatever. And Molly's like, well, I could just,
No, Mom.
Poor Molly, though. Also, so Molly was like distraught, which because she felt so bad. There was a line in here I wrote with, so in How I Met Your Mother, this kind of is a whole episode of last words. And so actually what's funny is that when I was watching Goblet of Fire yesterday, because I don't quite remember how the maze thing, how all of that with the Portkey back to when Cedric dies, I don't remember how that plays out in the book. Yeah. Which we'll get to later on. But what I was thinking about with the movie is, knowing that it's coming, and Amos is like with Cedric outside in the movie, and I was like, okay, this is the last moment that you're gonna be with your son. So I was thinking about that, and it was funny because this also played out in this chapter.
That in the movie, Amos's acting around Cedric dying is probably the best dead body reveal.
Yeah. It always
that I've ever
stabs me in the heart every time I hear it.
His shouting is like, it's really good.
It's that, and then it's the fanfare music. All of that next to each other is yeah, I know. Every time I hear it, I'm just like, oh, triggered. I can't listen to it. It's not happy. It's not a happy. Well, yes, okay, but yeah, that's all in the movie.
All to come, yeah.
But Molly feeling bad for thinking like, oh, what if something happened to you? And this is like, we know Molly she does a lot. Like that is also demonstrated again in this chapter. Every time we see her, she's doing like 50 things or caring for everyone, making sure all the items on the to-do list are checked and everyone's prepared and whatever. But this also reveals like there's a big sense of anxiety that Molly carries around with her because, I mean, she has many children that she loves very dearly, and stuff is becoming more dangerous.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I mean, I think that's what makes me the thing that stands out to me is Rita. Right? It's the Molly and Rita interaction essentially, where Rita intentionally stokes this.
Yeah.
Because who is it it's Bill, you're right, that says like, well, she would have just said like, they didn't say anything, which was ominous or something
there was always going to be something that she would have said that would have caused.
That to me is like what fraud looks like, where you have this predetermined narrative and then whatever comes out, you just plug it in. You're like, well, I'm going to stoke fear.
Yeah. What is the most money I can make by capitalizing on people's fears?
Yeah.
Whatever the situation is, it doesn't matter.
I wonder if the clock had them in mortal peril.
We also I don't think we saw the clock before, right?
I can't
remember because it's hard to tell when I was trying to make sense of like, how she does it where she reminds you of something you've already seen before. I couldn't tell if it was a reminder or if it was, this is the clock and this is what it looks like.
Do you think she made that clock?
Molly?
Yeah.
I don't know. What I keep thinking about with that clock in particular is that there might be many forms of the trace of like, how do you keep track of, how do you track people in the wizarding world? What kind of magic?
She took a blood sample from them so that it would keep working.
Or maybe Arthur, because Arthur's like fascinated. Yeah. And Arthur works at the ministry, so maybe he knows something about.
They use mechanical clocks, so I don't think it's necessarily that they wouldn't. Well, but it's
somebody
clearly
would have
magic.
to use the magic to make a trace, something like a trace to track family members, or to even know like what does it mean to be in mortal peril? How do you? It would have to be something very like connected to the person or the people. So yeah, maybe something.
Well, later on we do get Dumbledore is even like loves that thing. That because he's like, oh, that great clock of hers. I think it's book 6 because Dumbledore apparates Harry straight to the Burrow but then leaves. He doesn't go with him. And he says something like, "Oh, she probably already knows that." Oh, wait, that doesn't make sense. I don't know. Now I can't remember when it is, but Dumbledore comments on the clock,
Oh my gosh.
which then also kind of stands out because we also find out that Dumbledore invents a couple of things. One thing in particular as like a magical invention, and he probably like enjoys this magical invention. That's what it was the first time it ever occurred to me that Molly may have made it. I always assumed it got passed down, and maybe the hands change or something like that. But
Like in the Weasley family,
yeah,
or in I
yeah,
forget her name, Pruitt. Is that
Pruitt's.
her
That's right.
her maiden name?
Nice. Wow, pulled that one out.
Yeah. So Molly does
Yeah.
everything for everyone in the
Yes.
meantime because we still
She gets the dress robes. Ron doesn't even know.
we have to go to school. So
Yeah.
she goes to Diagon Alley, gets everyone's stuff, goes to the Gringotts vault, and somehow is able to get Harry Potter's money out of his vault. But we're gonna
Yes.
just be fine with that, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
And then also the
one slide.
washing the socks, which I was like, oh, little Harold. But the book that Hermione already starts reading is the Standard
Yes.
Book of Spells, grade or year 4.
Yeah.
And what I was thinking about is like, obviously we see the Standard Book of Spells over and over each year. There has to be, I don't know if we've talked about this before, there has to be a curriculum committee or some sort of standardizing board that like determines these are the spells
Non-standard spells.
that we do. Or maybe there once was and they just said this is what it is and
Common
never looked
core
at it
curriculum for students.
Witches and wizards. These are the standard spells for year 4.
Yeah, that stuck out. And then I also really find it endearing that Ginny is fixing the book out and just like out by the fireplace. Like she's just fixing the book. There was something that was very evocative to me. I could imagine it in my head. She's talking, but she's focused on this, and she's like, just part of her life is to make sure that this thing can survive, and it's been used by 6 other people at least.
Well, there were little details throughout that reminded us of like the Weasleys also, because the quote I wrote is related to money. And so there's like the fixing of the book. There is Ron. I don't know if this was related to it or not, or if it's just like, oh, there's a hole in his Chudley Cannon's like little thing on his bed. And then, of course, the dress robes, which Ron is very distressed about. And Harry, well, because the thing is that Molly is purchasing new stuff basically for the people who aren't her kids,
Right.
and also like managing the hand-me-downs, which were already gonna be a thing. Like Ron has always had the hand-me-downs because, I mean, he is the second youngest, Ginny is the youngest, but so Ron gets all the hand-me-downs, especially from the boys.
Yep.
And so Ginny probably even gets new stuff because she's the only girl. About what?
Pigwidgeon? Is that the quote?
No. My quote is about when the moment with the robes happens and Ron is like, well, Harry's is whatever, I would rather have that. And Molly is like, says like, I have to do hand-me-downs, and looks flushed. And it says, Harry looked away. He would willingly have split all the money in his Gringotts vault with the Weasleys, but he knew they would never take it. And I was just like...
That's really sweet. It made me think of the Fred and George thing that will happen at the end of this book.
They were funny in that moment because they basically took back if the Hogwarts Express crashed tomorrow, this was the last thing you ever said to
Even
us.
Mrs. Weasley laughed.
I know.
Sometimes you just got a good joke.
Yeah. Yep,
yeah, because the chapter ends on that theme as well, because Pig is choking or whatever, and Ron's like, why does everything I own touch crap or whatever he says?
Well, that is absolutely foreshadowing. It's a little more subtle than in the movie, where it's like, in the movie, the smoldering like look of disdain, where I'm just like, oh, this is a little too much, but we don't get these scenes in the movie, so like you don't see that build
here
up.
It's a building. It really is building.
And if you think about it, this has also been a recurring thing throughout books 1 through 3, but not as like, it doesn't seem that Ron has been bothered by it until like it just keeps coming up, but Ron just is kind of, he doesn't say anything about it until now. He's starting to be a little irritated by it, or enough to vocalize it, even in front of Harry. He might think this, but he's vocalizing it now.
Well, let's be clear. We know one of the triggers of this is anytime they run into Lucius Malfoy. He
Yes.
always comments on this to the whole
He
family,
does.
and Ron's dad, and I think Ron really likes his dad,
Yeah.
and like would hurt even more, and it
Yeah.
smolders.
Well, if you think about it also, we've talked about Percy a lot. It's interesting. I wasn't expecting to talk about Percy a lot throughout these episodes, but Percy takes it a different way of
Yes.
this, his reaction. Because he's also, all of them are part of this. They know that this is, or I'm sure they also get comments, not just from Lucius or overhear things or whatever. They know that people say things about their family or think things about them. And so Percy's thing is like, well, I'm gonna change that by being different, or I don't know. Like Percy has this different reaction to it. But yeah, especially Ron to me, and we see this even in the moments with Draco, Ron is the person that wants to defend and stand up for himself, his family, his friends, and all of that. Like he's like the hot-headed one that lunges at Malfoy or anything like that, because he knows that it's it's not okay. You bullies.
No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really compelling part of the story because of how differently the kids seem to react to a similar circumstance, and it's really interesting because I would describe Percy as like his whole mindset is in spite.
Yeah.
In spite of.
Yes. Yep.
So he's like, in spite of being poor and not having parents who like were incredibly ambitious, or however he views it, I'm gonna go do all this stuff, and probably in his heart of hearts wants to be a minister for magic.
Yeah.
And I think Ron right now, his attitude is very much like because of, so he's very much like, oh, because we're poor, like I get made fun of and I'm looked down on, or like I live in Harry's shadow and all that, and it'll come out that way of like fame and glory and wanting. He kind of wants some of the same things as Percy, because we know from his look in the mirror in the first
I was about to bring that up. Like Ron, not just because he's friends with Harry, but because, like I said, he's the second youngest, so he has this sort of like, he's trying to live up to something. He has several older brothers who have done things regardless of like how, like they're all different things, but he is searching for his thing to be like, okay, mom and dad or whoever are gonna see me as my own person, not just like another Weasley, another kid with red hair. And then on top of that, now you're Harry Potter's best friend, Harry Potter, the chosen one. And so again, after 3 full years, it's probably.
I'm a huge fan of the consistency, right? Because if you think about like Percy, from the day we meet him, is all about influence and authority.
Oh, yeah.
And so he wants to build influence in a way like of being a very powerful wizard politically. Ron, when we meet him, wants to be famous.
Yeah.
He wants notoriety.
Yeah.
And so he sees himself as head boy and the Quidditch captain, and he's holding the trophy. He is the one who fanboys over Crumb the most.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because like the head boy thing, like Percy's like motivation for that is different than Ron's motivation for that. Even though it's like the same tangible thing or like title thing, but the
Ron
way
wants to be seen.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Percy wants power.
Percy wants to separate. He wants to rise above.
Yeah.
It's really, the Weasley family is fantastic. The dynamics, the whole story. I mean, Fred and George, always my favorite. Basically, Fred, George, then Ginny, then Ron for me.
We don't really get to interact that much with Bill and Charlie.
No, it's enjoyable reading this book though, because they're around for these chapters, which is really fun. Because they're not always there, obviously.
Yeah.
When do we meet each of them? I think this is when we met Bill and Charlie, right? Yeah,
we've only heard about them because they weren't in Hogwarts, and so Charlie, we didn't even see him with the dragon thing.
It was this book where
it was this one.
Harry's like, oh, he's cool. Charlie is
I
all.
think Harry might have like seen the picture. That was like the first like visual seeing of
Mm.
them, but meeting them, I think this
Oh,
was
yeah,
for
from
sure the first time he
Egypt.
met Bill, but in
Right.
terms of Charlie, I think it's also the first time he met Charlie as well.
Yeah.
So
And we're waiting on Sirius. Waiting on the response.
Mm.
Harry's first inkling of what if he's been caught. And I think it's Ron or Hermione is just like, well, if he got caught, they would write about it on the front page.
Come on, Harry. Think like these reporter business people over
Here comes
here.
Winnie. He was just eating breakfast. He got his
Yeah.
back for hugs and kisses.
Aw.
But that was fun, though. So I think we're about to go to Hogwarts.
Finally.
Yeah.
It's 10 chapters
I know we
in,
laughed in the movie.
right?
You said something like,
It was,
oh,
yeah.
that was 9 chapters of the book.
Well, it was just like scene. Oh, Quidditch World Cup, but we're not going to watch it.
No,
So.
not at all. Yeah, it's just it just starts and
Yeah.
ends. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Until
That's why I
next
like the
time.
books.
Wand's
Wand's
ready.
ready.